Scared for real.
Talk about the original 1954 Godzilla, and now 70th anniversary. We're going to talk about the entire Godzilla franchise. And as usual, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Get that notification button, and sometimes you get sounds with that notification. That means we have a new episode for you to consume. And we're also on X, Instagram, Facebook. Our handle is at Scared for Reels. Feel free to comment and talk about Godzilla or any of the other past episodes. We love to interact. That's the thing. So any way you want to interact with us, please do so. We even have an email that you can send it to us if you're so inclined. All right, so we talked about the 1954 Godzilla. This time around, we're going to talk about the entire franchise, and we can't talk about all 39. It's just impossible.
Yeah, that'd be a long. That'd be a long podcast.
It'd be a long one. Before I go into picking my favorites, what Godzilla movies have you seen, Adam?
I don't think I've seen all 39, Chris, but just the joys of cable television growing up. I just my Godzilla exposure came from whether it was TBS or TNT when Turner would put on the Godzilla marathons like on a Saturday or Sunday morning, and they'd just run them straight,
right,
all the way from the Raymond Burr American version of Godzilla, all the way to the most campy ones, the one with like the little kid baby Godzilla. And,
Son of Godzilla.
Son of Godzilla. Yeah, I mean, like
Manila, Son of Godzilla.
Godzilla versus Mega Godzilla. Mothra. You name them. I caught them in one form or another.
Right. So I had to go through and pick out the ones that were my personal favorites, and it was not an easy task. But again, you know how I am with franchises. This is the only one. I have a couple of franchises that I enjoy. Zatoichi, and I love Godzilla. Godzilla is probably my favorite franchise. But I'm open to admit, just like you are, Adam, that there's some downs with this franchise, and
you got 39 movies. They all can't be home runs. I mean, I don't care how creative you are. You're gonna strike out at least once or twice.
Well, and again, some of them would not do so well, and it would ruin the budget for the next one. And some of them, like you probably saw, had a lot of stock footage from other ones. That was a sign that they needed to save money. So let's show old footage of Godzilla. But throughout the ups and downs, I mean, there were obviously more ups. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about a 70-plus year franchise.
Yeah, I mean, again, I can spend a whole, without even watching any of the movies, Chris, I could probably do a whole show just on the pop culture impact alone of Godzilla.
Because it's not just film franchises. We have comic books,
television,
merch,
music.
Because there was an animated series over in Japan. Mm-hmm. And I think there was even an animated series over here, if I'm not mistaken. And there's just countless of toys and
again, there's references and everything. I mean, even from the children's show Rugrats.
Rugrats.
The main character Tommy's his favorite character is called Reptar. It's Godzilla, just in the form of that cartoon. The last episode we mentioned the original Power Ranger series. The Green Ranger literally summoned Godzilla from the water in robot form.
Yeah, but the Mecha Godzilla. You showed me the clip. Yeah. I never got into the Power Rangers, but you showing me that little sequence, it was like we're watching Mecha Godzilla, and we're going to talk about that Mecha Godzilla very soon.
And again, you and I are such big music fans. Blue Oyster Cult. The Godzilla song. I mean, it's just.
Oh no! It's Godzilla.
You want to talk about my exposure to Godzilla, like between movies, and they would run promos for the marathon they're doing. That's the song that would be playing is the Blue Oyster Cult Godzilla. It's everywhere.
Oh,
he's everywhere.
Absolutely. So we're going to start with the third Godzilla in the franchise, King Kong versus Godzilla. We're going to talk about the American version a little bit here, but I want to focus on the Japanese version because the American version we know all about because if you want to listen to more in depth on the American side of King Kong versus Godzilla, listen to our King Kong episode, because they were gonna they had to get rights to use the King Kong name because RKO owned the rights, and there was a lot of fighting over that because the two producers were like, well, it's our movie. RKO's like, no, it's our movie. And so there's a lot of internal struggles with that and fighting.
Yeah, and then RKO goes under and,
and now Warner. And to promote the movie, I love, I don't know if you were aware of this. I haven't been able to find any of the commercials, but Toho released interviews with King Kong and Godzilla in which the monsters acted like sumo wrestlers preparing for their bout against each other.
That's funny.
So you got to imagine Ishiro Honda was not enthused about coming back.
That's cool because, like, again, we talk about cultural impact and having its influence. You know, the big thing in 2024 when Freddy vs. Jason comes out. In Vegas, they did a whole pre-fight
I've seen footage
showdown with Robert Englund and
Kane Hodder, right?
No, it was Kane Hodder was not Jason in that movie. It was Ken something. I can't his last
Ken
name.
the stuntman.
Yeah, basically. But anyway, like they did a whole pre-fight weigh-in, and so to know that they were doing this with Godzilla and King Kong way back in the day, that's cool. Yeah.
So in this promotion, Godzilla was quoted as saying, 7 years has passed since I rose from the bottom of the southern seas and raved about in Japan, leaving destruction behind wherever I crawled. It is most gratifying for me to have the privilege of seeing you again after breaking through an iceberg. So they actually tie in the second Godzilla movie, Godzilla Raids Again. They literally freeze Godzilla in an iceberg. Okay? And then you remember the beginning of King Kong versus Godzilla, the American ship crashes into the iceberg. Well, they don't last too long after that.
No.
So King Kong's response, I may be the stranger to the younger people here, but have quite a number of fighting adventures to my credit. I will fight to the last ditch in the forthcoming encounter with Mr. Godzilla, for my title is at stake. Hearing that the world-renowned special effects director Eiji Tsuburaya is to act as referee, I'm going to return to the screen in high spirits. So,
wow,
it's a little funny thing, and again, you can't talk about Godzilla without talking about Eiji Tsuburaya. And I feel bad at him. I kind of neglected the man in the suit, the man in the Godzilla suit, the original Haru Nakajima. He's the pioneer of suit acting, obviously. He was the first one to get in there. There was a couple of different suit actors, but he was the prominent one. Haru Nakajima. He was in 12 Godzilla movies, consecutive 12 films. And the last one was Godzilla versus Gigan. I mean, this guy, he was a stuntman as well, and so he could handle all of the oomph that was needed to play Godzilla.
Yeah.
But, man, oh, man, it probably took a toll on him, I would imagine. There's been 7 actors, from what I understand, 7 different actors over the course of the franchise that have donned the suit.
Oh.
So in various different movies.
Right. Well, I mean, now, obviously, we know it's all CGI, so there's no more suit.
Yeah, that part I kind of miss. It was just something special. You knew there was a guy in the suit, you know?
Yeah.
And even in, like... when Godzilla goes to space, the one right after Ghidorah there, he does this little victory dance. Yeah, you gotta. Now they obviously altered the costume several times, but still, it's trying to do a dance inside of that suit.
Oh, sure.
Oh, but yeah, I can't believe I totally didn't talk about Haru Nakajima. I mean, this guy. Rodan, Mothra, The War of the Gargantuas. Remember that movie? Did you ever watch that one?
Yeah.
That's another Ishiro Honda movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, he even had a minor role in Seven Samurai.
Oh, wow.
I mean, this guy, he did a lot of stunt work, and obviously he was noted for suiting up for whatever monster they wanted him to be. But Haru Nakajima, he passed away back in 2017, unfortunately. But What a legacy that guy left behind.
Yeah.
So they brought back Ishiro Honda, and I mentioned right at the start that he was not enthusiastic about this. He said it was a stupid idea. Toho pushed for it, obviously. Well, they needed the money. But they wanted the monsters to be made as funny as possible. And they brought in this new screenwriter, Shinichi Sekizawa, not the Dr. Sekizawa. It's interesting, they share the same last name, but they're no relation, obviously. One's a fake character, but this screenwriter added a lot of interesting and fun ideas to lighten up the franchise a little bit. Mm-hmm. Now, easily we could dismiss it as being silly, but he actually, I mean, he was responsible for Ghidorah.
Right.
He did a lot of the scripts, and some of them were quite interesting. So you got screenwriter Shinichi Sekizawa, and of course Eiji Tsuburaya comes back. Honda disagreed, though. He and Sekizawa decided to do something. Okay, Honda's okay, I'm going to do this. But they took a satirical element into this one about TV and corporate advertising.
Huh.
And you got to watch the Japanese version, because the American version, it dabbles a little bit into it, but not as much as the Japanese version. And it's like, again, you're watching like two different movies, because some of the stuff they talk about, the translation was kind of stupid.
Yeah.
But so Mr. Sekizawa satirized the social conditions. This is what Ishiro Honda said about it. So the reason I showed the monster battle through the prism of a ratings war was to depict the reality of the times. People were making a big deal out of ratings, but my own view of TV shows was that they did not take the viewer seriously, that they took the audience for granted, so I decided to show that through my movie. And it really does.
Wow.
You got this pharmaceutical guy who's like, all he cares about is having the highest rated show. He wants, because he's a middleman.
Yeah.
And the guy who played him is a comedian. He looks like Groucho Marx, and I think that's no mistake.
Yeah, it's probably on purpose.
Because he has some whimsical lines in the movie every so often, but he's kind of like the marketing director for this pharmaceutical guy, and the competitor sponsor is all over the Godzilla stuff. So he's like, we got to find our own monster.
Right.
So they go to Faroe Island, the imaginary Faroe Island. And after watching Ingmar Bergman films, it's like, oh, not that Faroe Island, but they go to Faroe Island, and the natives there talk about this evil or this monstrous spirit, which turns out to be King Kong. And and of course they capture King Kong again, and bring him back. But it's that whole corporate greed, and I like how Honda, especially in the Japanese version, it really satirizes it very well. The American version is still fun to watch, and again, like you, that's the first time I saw King Kong versus Godzilla, and they still have not given an official release to that Japanese version in America.
Wow.
It's in the Criterion box set, but it's on the supplement disc. It's kind of thrown on there. It's not remastered or anything like that. It's still not bad. I mean, it's still better quality than DVD, but it's like Toho wouldn't allow them to have like remaster it or anything like that. It's just thrown on the supplement disc.
Interesting.
But it's cool. At least we get to see it.
At least you get it, yeah.
Yeah, because I was excited. I think that was like the second disc I popped in, because I had to rewatch the original, and then I'm like, I got to check out the Japanese version. Again, there was that whole rumor, and it was like I don't know if it was thrown in for marketing purposes. Oh, Godzilla wins in the Japanese version. Well, there was only one ending shot.
Right.
Contrary to what the rumor gossip people say. But yeah, King Kong versus Godzilla. And yeah, let's talk about the heavily edited King Kong versus Godzilla. See, the Japanese version came out in 1962. In 1963, the American version came out. You had John Beck, Tom Montgomery. They directed new scenes with American actors and a news report subplot that was never in the original.
Huh.
It's like the movie opens up quoting Shakespeare, and that was not the Japanese version.
Interesting.
They still have the globe, but it's part of that show that the opposing pharmaceutical company is sponsoring.
Yeah.
And the pharmaceutical marketing guy's watching that episode, and he's frustrated because the ratings for the one that they're sponsoring is in the toilet, so he's just really frustrated with it. But yeah, you get the whole news report subplot, that's pretty much what they add to it. And the editor of the American film changed the narrative structure, replaced much of the original soundtrack with stock music. You got the brilliant Akira Ifukube score, and it's replaced with stock music. It's like, just makes you shake your head.
Yeah.
It really does. Because you have a brilliant score like that. Why not showcase it? But Universal was responsible for that. They had never released the original Japanese version, and because of that, it was the last Godzilla film to have its original Japanese version be made available in the United States. So again, they put it on the box set as a supplement, but it's heavily re-edited. It's still, I think it's a lot better than the edited version of the original Godzilla. It's still a lot more fun to watch than the Raymond Burr Godzilla. Yeah. But I don't know. I just think it's kind of silly. You know, why? There's certain scenes I guess they could re-edit, but why?
Right.
Why not just dub it exactly the way it was? I mean, they did that in the 70s with, some of the martial arts films, obviously the Shaw Brothers.
Yeah. I mean, it could be a number of reasons. I mean, right down to budget. I mean, like when you talked about, replacing the soundtrack, the first thing that went through my head, I was like, all right, how much was it going to cost them to use that original score?
It doesn't get in. Couldn't find that specific information, but it's not like this guy was John Williams. He wasn't world renowned.
I understand that, but I'm just saying that, just the way I think, in terms of the industry,
right?
That's where, I mean, again, yeah, unless you are getting into Universal's vaults and looking at all their files and paperwork and receipts from the last 100 years, you're probably not going to know exactly why.
Right.
But that's the first thing that goes through my head is, all right, they changed the score. How much did the original score cost, and was it at a breaking point for them?
Maybe
to just be cheaper to put their own generic thing in there.
It's not listed as the reason why. They don't really give any definitive reason, and they usually state that kind of stuff in biography stuff, and that was never mentioned.
Well, like I said, it was probably just again, I'm making an assumption here, but it was probably just one of those where can we cut costs? All right, we really don't need this score. Cut it there.
Well, we gotta dig up if there is such a thing, having an Akira Ifukube biography. If there is such a thing, I'm sure there is. But Tsuburaya, the special effects guy, definitely he loved a challenge, and we talked in detail how he really got into doing the helping design the different suits Godzilla wore and the miniature effects, and this guy embraced the more comic appeal to the character. And however, many of Tsuburaya's staff and crew members were frustrated with some of his decisions because he wanted to cater to the kids. Tsuburaya did, and I think that's overall what Toho wanted as well, because a few years after this, Toei Studios would create Gamera, which was supposed to rival Godzilla, but we'll talk about that at some other point. But the assistant effects director, recalled that he thought Tsuburaya went overboard and mentioned how the staff was in disbelief at some of the silly stunts Tsuburaya had Kong do. And we might add that the original American designers of Kong were not too happy with the Japanese design either. But remember the big octopus that Kong fights on Faroe Island? They literally used 4 live octopuses. Now, that would not happen today.
No.
That would not happen today. It was bad enough that I think they went through a few in Old Boy, like guy eating a real live octopus.
Yeah.
But that's, I mean, again, that probably wouldn't happen. That was only 20 years ago.
But here's the thing: we're also talking about international filmmaking, and
the rules are different.
Way different, than what you would get away with here in America.
Right. So they use 4 live octopuses as well as a prop and stop motion model. So he did get to finally use some stop motion stuff that he wanted to do originally.
Cool.
But of course, that was it's 8 years later, so
right.
Some of that stuff is probably now available in Japan. Tsuburaya's crew had gone to a beach near Tokyo to shoot the live sequences. They, again, this guy was a genius with the miniature sets. I mean, critics kind of are a little harsh with Tsuburaya because obviously he's not going to rival the mammoth miniature sets that he created in the original Godzilla movie, but it was still a pretty cool miniature set that he created on that island and in different parts of the movie. I mean, those are some cool sets in King Kong versus Godzilla as well. So they had fishermen provide octopus, and the crews would spend several days trying to get the right shots since, well, octopuses, I mean, they're not trained,
No, you can't really train them. They just do what they do.
So hot air was blown onto them to get them to move. And, well, after the filming of the scene was finished, most of them were released through legend has it, through Tsuburaya. He kept one for dinner.
Why not?
Yeah. Most of them were released, though. But one, I'm hungry. Let's eat.
Yeah.
That's what you do with octopuses. I don't know. I don't want to dwell too much on King Kong versus Godzilla because we got all these other ones we got to talk about here, but it is a very entertaining film. And if you have the money, wait for the half-off sales to buy it. But that Godzilla box set is truly amazing. I know some people have critiqued the packaging for it, but the cool thing about Criterion, I've had some discs go crap over the years, and they don't ask for receipts. They just which one was that? Can you send the UPC just to verify it's that? And they send another disc. Mm-hmm. They're really cool about that because the way it's packaged, Universal kind of did that with their Monster 4K set from last year. It's in the sleeves.
Yep.
And some people say that it gives out and the disc goes like right through. And I haven't had that happen. I knock on wood, it's 5 years later. I haven't had that problem, thankfully. But yeah, King Kong versus Godzilla, please do yourself a favor. Try to watch the Japanese version. And if you don't want the physical media aspect of it, I'm sure Internet Archive or some other, you won't find it on a streaming platform because of rights. Maybe Criterion, I don't even think Criterion has the rights to stream the original Japanese version of King Kong versus Godzilla. But definitely an amazing film, that's for sure. All right, so now I'm going to try to move in order here, not in the order of favorites. I'll rank some of my favorites afterwards, but we're going to go in order of the year they were released. So the next one, we kind of alluded to it with the Power Rangers talk, Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla.
Cool.
At this point in time, Ishiro Honda took a break from directing Godzilla movies. He did several in the 60s, kind of backed off from them. And you had Jun Fukuda, and he did 5 of the Godzilla movies. Do you remember the sea monster one of Godzilla, where he fights this giant crab? Abira, Horror of the Deep was the name of that one. He directed that one. He also has done some spy stuff too in the 60s, and actually Akira Takarada from the star of the original Godzilla, he did some films with Fukada as well. But yeah, he did the Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, and this one, it's a lot of fun. It's the 14th film of the series, and not only do you have Mechagodzilla, but you have Angirius return a little bit, the one with the spikes on the back,
yep.
That little monster.
Yep.
And you have an introduction to a new monster named King Caesar. Mm-hmm. Now, I love this movie. It's great, and I describe it as a cheesy, fun, beautiful mess.
Yeah.
Because it's a mess of a plot. You have these aliens, okay, that turn into apes when they die.
Interesting.
Or gorilla apes, whatever you want to call them. You think of Planet of the Apes, and I don't know how you cannot, and they'd never explain why.
Yeah.
It's just you have these aliens, they're in human form. When you kill them, they get blood splurting out of them, and then they turn into an ape. Basically a monkey suit, just like the original Planet of the Apes. So you got the whole alien angle, and that kind of got introduced with Ghidorah in the kind of a little bit in Ghidorah, because obviously the aliens from Venus use the humans as a vessel. So Ghidorah, we'll talk about Ghidorah in a minute. But actually, I think I skipped over Ghidorah. Let's talk about Ghidorah next. We're kind of jumping around here. I skipped. I had my browsers labeled wrong. But Ghidorah is 1964. It's one of two Godzilla movies made that year. They did Godzilla versus Mothra back in April, and at the end of the year, they had Ghidorah, the three-headed monster. Again, you have Eiji Tsuburaya back in form, and man, oh man, this is quite the monster, the three-headed monster. Did you ever watch that one?
Yeah, I've seen it. Yep.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that one?
Honestly, Chris, like they all kind of mashed together.
They mashed together.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah. But they bring the Yakuza plot in, and it's not clearly explained in the American version, because they chop 10 minutes out of it, and it's very frustrating. It's like, again, it's not like a 3-hour running time movie. It's literally like 90-something minutes. Yeah, 93 minutes. And they cut it down to like 83.
Right.
It's just kind of pointless. Why do that?
Right.
But anyway, so this film, the reason why they kind of rushed this one, but it's a cool plot, because you get like you get the Yakuza angle, and it, kind of like a spy James Bond influence kind of feel to it. The reason why this was rushed into production so quick, because Redbeard, Kira Kurosawa's last movie with Toho, was way behind schedule. That movie took a long time to make. It's a masterpiece. It's brilliant. But so they had a movie they could release in its place. So let's do another Godzilla movie.
Right.
And this is the one. This is the Godzilla movie. I mean, it took 5. This is the 5th Godzilla movie. 5 movies for where Godzilla actually is persuaded to help out the humans now.
Yeah.
So you had him fight Mothra in the previous movie. Mothra kind of wins, but Mothra she's peaceful, and you see Godzilla fighting with Rodan. Yeah, Rodan comes back in this movie. So you have Ishiro Honda back in here. You have Eiji Tsuburaya, and this is this is a lot of fun. Again, there's the whole alien angle. This was the first time that an alien angle was introduced into a Godzilla movie, and become kind of a staple through the end of the Showa era and through parts of the Heisei and Millennium eras as well. But yeah, you got a new monster, King Ghidorah. In the American version, it's Ghidorah or Ghidorah. I've heard so many different pronunciations. There was a 1991 King Kong versus Ghidorah, and you have the bad English dub. Oh no, it's King Ghidorah. It's actually Ghidorah, King Ghidorah, three-headed monster, but the American version, the Ghidorah. They even misspell it. But anyways, got the whole plot of extraterrestrial activities. You got Venus. You got the space monster Ghidorah that was shot down. They think it's a meteorite. They talk about having there's a little bit of climate stuff in there as well. Yeah. They kind of dance around the climate thing where it's hot in the wintertime. And, well, Ghidorah's coming. That's why. Right. Rodan is kind of buried underneath this volcano, this mount. I can't pronounce the mountain in the movie, but Rodan is kind of buried in the mountain, and of course there's a lot of seismic activities happening there because of the meteorites coming. That's near the mountain. It's kind of awakened Rodan a little bit. Yeah. So Rodan comes out, Godzilla comes back, and they're fighting amongst themselves. And then you have the two little island twins come along, and they were actually pop singers.
Oh,
the
wow.
Peanuts. They were called the Peanuts. And again, Akira Ifukube's brilliant score and the Mothra song that he introduced 3 years prior, when Mothra had her first appearance. This is her third appearance in a movie, and the Mothra theme comes back, and it's a brilliant song. The lyrics are great, and you expect some cheesy stuff, but the American version is very cheesy.
Yeah.
This one is you get more of the character of the Yakuza as a guy who betrayed the princess's family. He actually was a member of their family, kind of allude to it. You don't get that in the American version.
Yeah.
It's like you got this, they want to kill the princess. And there's really, okay. But you get it's very quick. It's not, they don't dwell on it.
Right.
And why cut that out? I know we could talk about it over and over again, but it's kind of silly how they chop out all of these important elements in the movies.
Right.
But, I mean, the movie did very well, obviously. They go on to do Invasion of the Astro Monster, which would be the second appearance of Ghidorah. But this one was a lot of fun. Again, you got kind of the cool James Bond vibe. You know, it's a subplot, the Yakuza thing. So that was a big thing in Japan at the time, in the mid-'60s through the end of the 70s. You had all these gangster Yakuza movies. So they kind of had fun with that with this one. But all with an alien subplot, and of course Godzilla, and it's you get all of that in normal movies. You get a convoluted mess, but somehow it kind of meshes and gels together perfectly.
Yeah.
In Ghidorah. So I love Ghidorah. Again, please do yourself a favor, watch the Japanese version. I know it's kind of nostalgic watching the bad English dubs, but it brings a whole new dimension to the stories. And if you love Godzilla and you're not watching the original Japanese versions, what are you doing? What are you doing? You got to watch them. At least watch them once, you know? So I was talking about, you know, Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, and that is the 14th one in the franchise. So I kind of got messed up with the whole space thing. So it's kind of continues off and on through the end of the Showa era films. But in this one, this one again, you don't have Ishiro Honda involved, but it's still a lot of fun. The body, again, the suitmation is pretty cool. You've got actor Kazunari Mori, who wore the Mechagodzilla suit in this one. And at this point, the original suitmation guy is retired.
Yep.
He's done. So the suit was made from you say it polyethylene? Is that how you say it? I'm not good with some of the polyethylene material. The suit's head and hands were made of fiber reinforced plastic. You think it's metal because it looks like it,
right,
but you got fiber reinforced plastic and a polyethylene material. Isn't that something?
Yep.
And as usual, you have Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, and in America, theaters changed it to Godzilla versus the Bionic Monster.
Interesting. But
they got in trouble with the Bionic Monster deal because, well, Universal Television had the $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman TV series. Oh. They were not too happy when they decided to release it. And that's the thing. March 21st, 1974 was Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. They wouldn't release that till 3 years later in the United States. So they obviously had to save themselves from a lawsuit. They had to change Godzilla versus the Bionic Monster to Godzilla versus the Cosmic Monster.
Okay.
Not really anything cosmic about Mechagodzilla. It was literally a robot created by the aliens in the ape, or the ape aliens.
Yeah.
I laugh every time because it's just, there's no explanation why they were apes. You know what I mean? They give some sort of explanation of where they come from. It's a different type of planet, but they're trying to take over Earth and dominate it. Obviously, they're bad guys.
Right. But
just the whole fact that they're apes.
Yeah.
Monkey suits. And there's no explanation for it. But yeah, there's a lot of people who are very critical of this movie. Rip off of Planet of the Apes, they said. It's an improvement over Godzilla versus Megalon, but that's not saying much. Masuro Sato's score was interesting, though. It's kind of had a jazzy kind of score to it.
Interesting.
So Akira Ifukube was not involved with this one, unfortunately. But, it was still a fun score because Japanese scores typically predominantly were kind of jazzy in this time period. Mm-hmm. Even the gangster films had a kind of a jazzy kind of score to it.
Oh, wow.
So, and of course, they were really critical of the final fight is suitably impressive, although the tongue-in-cheek reference to Sergio Leone. So there's a little Leone with the close-ups of the eyes of the monsters. It's silly. It's meant to be fun.
Right.
I know it's not a high-quality movie, but it is a lot of fun. And some of it just doesn't add up. That's why I didn't rate it as high as the other ones. But it was still a lot of fun. And I like the follow-up, the return of Mechagodzilla. Ishiro Honda comes back for one last round a year later. And again, the same kind of aliens. I don't think they turn into apes, though, in that one. It's just very, very weird, all of the different alien forms. Because they Invasion of the Astro Monster, it was a different type of alien too. Yeah. So it's like a ton of alien stuff. I think people were getting tired of it. The box office was dwindling on even the Mechagodzilla movies. It wasn't until years later where people actually really enjoyed the actual Mechagodzilla part of the franchise. And they would continue that Mechagodzilla storyline through some of the Heisei area in the 90s as well. And obviously it was so popular that they brought it in, and it was a huge surprise to me in King Kong versus Godzilla. Because after their big fight in the 2021 King Kong versus Godzilla, Godzilla has to fight Mechagodzilla in that one.
Yeah. Yep.
And King Kong reluctantly, but they kind of team up, and I don't know if friends is the word, but they have an uneasy alliance.
Yep.
That would continue on through the other legendary movies. So now we return to the Return of Godzilla. Okay, at this point in time, after the Return of Mechagodzilla, the 15th and final film of the Showa era, Godzilla they thought was done. 8 years later, though, the Return of Godzilla. And you get Raymond Burr coming back in the American version in Godzilla 1985. Did you ever watch that?
Yeah, I've seen that one too. Yep.
Oh, it was so bad. I watched that one once, Adam.
Yep.
And I thought it was so bad. You kind of went with it, but it was obvious that they inserted Raymond Burr, who was in a wheelchair at this point.
Right.
So he couldn't really get around and do anything. So it was kind of it was more noticeable that they inserted him in that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, you get this is a return to form 30 years after the original Godzilla. You have Ken Tanaka in this one. He was a prominent Japanese actor. He's still around. He's been in like 40 films. He's like the younger guy in this one. You get some veterans of the series that show up again. And it's not comical. This one's a more serious return. There's really nothing funny. There is a couple of sequences they throw in that don't work to make people laugh because it's such a heavy movie. Because it just returns Godzilla to being a killing machine. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
They ignore everything of the Showa era movies except for the original Godzilla. So like they've done that in Halloween and Friday the 13th a few times. Completely ignore complete slate.
Yep.
This is like a direct sequel to the original Godzilla. And again, it's not it's kind of underwhelming, unfortunately, at the end, but it is really cool. That the reason I like it is it brings Godzilla back to a more serious killing machine. And again, you got government officials trying to manipulate Godzilla to their own way. And again, you get pompous, arrogant people, and most of them are politicians, and Godzilla doesn't like that.
Right.
You know? But they keep trying to manipulate and do things their way, and it's just... And again, it wasn't 100% successful, but it is, again, the reason I like it is it brings Godzilla back to his true form.
Right.
That's like the main reason I like it, you know. But and then an even better Godzilla movie was the follow-up 5 years later, Godzilla versus Biollante. And this is like literally a direct sequel to Godzilla 1984. Mm-hmm. So Godzilla is kind of buried beneath a volcano. Again, very underwhelming climax.
Right.
That's the only gripe I have with the return of Godzilla. All right, he's been absent for 8 years, and this is the best they can do. But Godzilla versus Biollante, it really brings the more human side of the story, and it's actually it has more resonance, even though it's not 100% effective. But you got corporations this time struggling to control samples of Godzilla's cells. Here we go. Yeah, you literally got people killing other people for it.
Oh wow!
So you got a lot of greed, and there's also this one scientist who decides to abandon all of that, and he was actually in Ghidorah, the three-headed monster. He was the detective that protects the princess.
Oh, okay.
He shows up. He's the doctor who takes the cells, and he becomes. They hire this doctor. He reluctantly gives in. He's not really a fan of messing around with Godzilla's cells, but after his daughter is blown up over all of this nonsense of trying to get Godzilla's cells, he decides, I'm not doing it anymore. But he is, it's like an assassin. I'm done, but gets coaxed back into one last time.
Right.
So what he does is he actually creates a different type of monster, not on purpose, but he takes Godzilla's cells. He also takes the cells of his daughter who got blown up, and he puts it in like a rose stem. Mm-hmm. And again, from what I'm reading here, the idea originated from a public story writing contest and set a trend which was common to all Heisei era movies that would follow, in which Godzilla faces off against opponents capable of metamorphing into new, more powerful forms. Not Transformers.
Right.
Not that. But this was like a plant of some kind. And I wish they would have gone further with the plant, because it was actually an interesting foe for Godzilla.
Right.
Like, he would destroy it, and then it would reform and get even bigger and bigger and bigger.
Interesting.
It is. I don't want to say too much about it, because you want to talk about a hard movie to find.
Yeah.
There was a DVD and a Blu-ray, but they're both out of print. Like, I think you can get off of Amazon the DVD for like $30-something.
Yeah.
Which is kind of pricey for a DVD.
Right.
But it was released in Japan in 1989. It got some good reviews. I mean, again, it was probably the most interesting human story since the original. I would rate it that high, the human story aspect, because some of them got so preposterous.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then, it received a direct-to-video release, though, in the United States 3 years later.
Wow.
They didn't even give it a theatrical release. But it was considered a box office disappointment for Japan because, well, they released it at the same time as Back to the Future 2 over there.
Oh, well, I mean.
Yeah. Even though Back to the Future 2 is considered among fans like the weakest, it still was.
It's still Back to the Future. I mean,
yeah.
It's
even in Japan.
That trilogy is such
even Godzilla couldn't topple Back to the Future.
That trilogy is such a powerhouse, and
it's the best movies Robert Zemeckis ever did, in my opinion. Yes, better than Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
But there was an English dub released, and again, it went straight to video, and there was a lot of lawsuits that went involved in this one. You know, Toho filed their lawsuit against Miramax and $500,000 to pay Toho to distribute the film. It was
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was a lot of insanity for this one, but it's unfortunate. It was released on VHS by HBO in '92, but was relicensed by Miramax and released on Blu-ray and DVD in 2012. But unfortunately, it's hard. It's hard to get this. I mean, in 2021, Toho did premiere a 4K remaster, along with 7 other Godzilla films also remastered in 4K. And I hope it gets another release, because there hasn't been anything in at least 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Because Lionsgate had a Blu-ray and a DVD, but they're harder to get. I'm sure you can find them, but you have to go through, secondhand outlets for them, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But, Godzilla, I wasn't as big of a fan of the High Sea or Millennium era Godzilla movies. Mm-hmm. I mean, Godzilla Final Wars would be the final one before Legendary Pictures teamed up with the now famous 2014 Godzilla movie. You had Keith Emerson scoring the 2004 Godzilla Final Wars.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Keith Emerson, one of probably the greatest keyboardist of all time. So I again, if you want to do some research, watch all these Godzilla movies, I have to focus on the ones that I love the most. And this one is my second favorite Godzilla movie. And it's actually one of the best pictures released last year, Godzilla -1. Did you ever get a chance to see that one?
I haven't seen that one yet. I want to, though.
Oh, it is a gut punch. It's not as depressing as the original Godzilla.
Right.
But there are a lot of realistic scenes. So this literally takes place near the end of World War II. So this is a few years prior to the 1954 events.
Okay. So it's a prequel.
Kind of. Yeah. And just so you know, I have to give a huge shout out to Shin Godzilla. That was the last Japanese Godzilla movie before Godzilla -1.
Yep.
And you have amazing direction from Takashi Yamazaki. This guy, you could tell he loves the character. And we've talked about all the time, when you have someone who loves the franchise, you can feel it in their filmmaking. And it's definitely true here. Takashi Yamazaki. And it took 70 years. I love the meme. It took 70 years. Godzilla won an Oscar, so don't give up. Because the visual effects won the Oscar.
Yeah.
You have the mammoth $200-something million Marvel movies. Again, some of that has to do with star power, but a lot of it, the technology stuff, is expensive. Mm-hmm. You have $300 million Marvel movies. This movie, $15 million.
Wow.
$15 million, and the movie has made at least $116 million.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. So this is, in my opinion, the second best Godzilla film of all time. And the fact that this one is not only anti-nuclear, anti-war, there's a lot of trauma in this movie. Because you got this kamikaze fighter pilot who doesn't want to die.
Yep.
He actually just lands somewhere. Oh, my ship needs some repairs before I can do this. He doesn't want to die.
Yep.
And over there, Godzilla shows his face for the very first time and destroys the whole unit there that repairs the ships.
Yep.
Or the planes, I should say. And he's traumatized by that. Mm-hmm. So he goes back home. He's disgraced because you're a kamikaze. You didn't die. You're a disgrace.
Sure.
And
100%.
His family's house is all destroyed because of the nuclear bombs.
Yep.
That we dropped on Japan. So there's that. He meets up with another young woman who actually has a baby, and he thinks she abandoned the baby, but she had to leave the baby, and he takes the baby. So he's got some responsibility now. So he's taking care of the baby, and it kind of, there's this one neighbor who kind of hates him because he again, he disgraced his country. That's her perception. But she slowly warms up because, like, she's like, I don't want anything to happen to the baby. I care about you, but
yeah.
So she kind of helps him out a little bit, but then the young lady returns and they kind of form a bond, and you think there's going to be a romance story there, and it really doesn't take that form, which is interesting. Mm-hmm. So it bucks a lot of cliches. The most important message here is the Japanese government won't help when Godzilla comes back, because he comes back. Basically, what's going on is the former kamikaze guy who's a coward, who labeled as a coward, he finds work as a minesweeper tasked with disposing of naval mines from World War II. Wow. They bump into Godzilla again. Long story short, I can't really get into the plot too much. They meet up with Godzilla again, and they get no help from the Japanese government. The Japanese government, we can't talk about it. It doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. They try to reach out to the United States government, the British government. No one wants to help. So to hell with the government, we got to band together and fight back for ourselves. And to have that message in such it's a time where it seems like it's a tyrannical government running things.
Right.
How this movie slipped through the cracks is awesome. Because it's like, the government is not there to help you. And that's the message of the movie. It's not anti-government, but
I mean,
you can't rely on the government to fix all the problems.
Right. As far as slipping through the cracks, I mean, you're also guising it under the post, right after World War II and the bombs. I mean, historically, there was no government to help you, in Japan, because Imperial Japan had been destroyed.
Right. Right. So basically you have this movie, and it came out same year as Oppenheimer, kind of ironic, dealing with the heaviness of the nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
You got the guy who created the nuclear bomb, and then you have the story about dealing with the aftermaths of the nuclear bomb. And this is like almost 80 years later.
Right. Yeah.
So it's an incredible achievement. It kind of gets a little cliche at the end. That's why I didn't give it like the highest rating, but it's still such a powerful movie, and it packs such a powerful punch. You decide your own fate, your own future, and the character eventually faces his biggest fear, which is himself, and he faces the monster at the end.
Yeah.
And it's such a powerful scene. The actual title, -1, symbolizes Japan's lowest point after World War II, and also the emergence of Godzilla worsens the country's already dire state, taking it below zero. So Godzilla -1. Just like I've said, this actually reverts back to the original concept that Godzilla, destructive, the force of nature, reflecting the horrors of war, also in contrast to recent Western depictions of the character as an anti-hero. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The thing that really makes Godzilla -1 not only is the amazing special effects done on a smaller scale budget, but the human story, so impressive, more so than anything the MonsterVerse's recent attempts at similar stories. I mean, they haven't even come close, in my opinion. I mean, I do enjoy, the legendary Toho collaboration of Godzilla for the past 10 years, but this recent film definitely solidifies one of the ways in which it breaks the recent mold of Godzilla's theatrical installments. Kind of makes you wish that Takashi Yamazaki would actually take over the MonsterVerse, that the legendary picture collaboration, kind of makes you wish he would take over that franchise. So the script initially took a year to develop, just in case you haven't heard the backstory on this, but it was actually on an outline from March 2019. Because of what happened 4 years ago, it forced the crew to postpone filmmaking for a few years, resulting in work on the screenplay taking roughly 3 years. Now, the worldwide anxiety, perceived government unreliability during this time became one of the major inspirations, and that's why I said it kind of slipped through the cracks. It doesn't come out and say anti-government, but it kind of just dances around that issue. Now, Yamazaki hoped that these events would be reflected clearly in the finished film. He steered clear of the setting the movie in a modern Japan and having to draw inspiration from the 2011 Fukushima nuclear disaster, as he believed it would have become too similar to Shin Godzilla, which, again, if you haven't seen Shin Godzilla, probably I should do an episode just on that movie alone. It's amazing, that film. What Takashi does instead is he decided to set Godzilla -1 in post-war Japan, having already depicted that period in a handful of his previous films. He also took the opportunity to include the heavy cruiser Taiko Shinden fighter destroyers, Yukazi and the Hibiki, because he was a fan of military history and had never depicted them before. Again, sorry about my butchering of these Japanese names, but not only was Yamazaki inspired by Shuzuke Kaniko's Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah Giant Monsters All-Out Attack, again, part of the Millennium series in 2001, he said that's one of his favorite Godzilla films. He reflected in a discussion, he goes, I had forgotten the context of Giant Monsters All-Out Attack for a while, but it seemed like, he said, I self-consciously thought about it when writing the scenario for Godzilla -1, without realizing I was under considerable influence. Not only the 1954 film Shin Godzilla, even Jaws, also War of the Worlds, the Spielberg stuff. So there is some Spielberg influence in here, even like Christopher Nolan and stuff, but he definitely had some Spielberg influence here. Probably the happier ending was definitely a Spielberg thing, because let's face it, the original Godzilla didn't have that happy ending vibe to it. Now, there was a novelization of the film written by Yamazaki. It was published in Japan. I think it was like November of last year. Now, the novel features a scene set on Odu Island that Yamazaki proposed for the film, but was left unfilmed since Toho refused to allow him to do pickups. Now, Yamazaki sought to cast talented individuals who were able to give convincing performances of people living during the Showa period and could make Godzilla's presence in the film seem more realistic. He did make his casting decisions influenced a little by the previous Godzilla films, since, I mean, the movie was about the lives of ordinary Japanese in the 1940s rather than the politicians, the bureaucrats, scientists, and those self-defense forces. Now, the reason for this was that Takashi wanted audiences to empathize with and connect with the characters despite the post-war setting. Now, in case you're wondering about the design of Godzilla in -1, it's actually a variation on the one in Godzilla the Ride, which was inspired by, again, the giant all-out monster attack one from 2001. Yamazaki initially envisioned this design having half-moon shaped eyes, but modeling head Kazuki Taguchi gave it an almond-shaped one instead, with the final design having the golden, almost shaped eyes. Now, Yamazaki also elaborated that since the crew created this Godzilla in a digital form, he said it allowed for much more detail than what was possible with any type of handcrafted version. Again, I prefer the handcrafted one over this one, but that's just probably because I grew up with it. But he said it allowed for much more detail, so we were able to increase the resolution of the scales, he said, for example, and make them feel really, really sharp and give it this aggressive texture. And he said, in terms of the bottom half of Godzilla, we made it feel very heavy and dense in a way that made the audience feel like this mountain and triangular silhouette was walking and moving through space. Now, Takashi attempted to make this Godzilla the most horrifying version yet. It comes close to the original, in my opinion, but the crew designed Godzilla, again, to be ferocious, violent, dynamic, with a static, godlike aspect, if you will. Now, its dorsal fins were made more spiky and ferocious than the incarnation of Godzilla the Ride, as if its regenerative energy had become disorderly, if you will. Now, Yamazaki stated that the team also tried to make Godzilla, quote-unquote, the deadliest in history, adding that it's discerning today, experiencing the freshness and fear felt by audiences at the time. Now, the visual effects, again, it won an Academy Award. It's the first and so far only Godzilla film to win an Academy Award. Now, all 610 of the film's visual effects shots, they were handled by a crew of 35 artists, under the supervision of Yamazaki, of course, and the direction of Kyoko Shibuya. So according to an article that I was reading, there was between a quarter and a third of the film's budget was spent on the visual effects. Again, it was like $15 to $16 million. Again, you can't compare it to a Hollywood budget, but 8 months alone were spent on creating the visual effects. How about that? And they were released in October of 2023, indicated that the team began creating the effects for the film back in July of 2022. So it took a while to put all this stuff together. And there was a black and white edition. I keep forgetting to add that there was a black and white edition, which we saw the colorized version first, and then when Godzilla Minus One made its second round, it was the black and white version. So the colorist, Masashiro Ishiyama, was assigned to create a black and white film. It's called Godzilla Minus One minus color. So Yamazaki proposed that Godzilla's atomic breath should remain in color for the black and white edition, which it did, kind of how Akira Kurosawa did with the amazing High and Low, which is a masterpiece in storytelling. It literally features colored smoke in that one key scene. However, concept was rejected by the crew. In regards to the minus color version, the director said in a statement, rather than just making it monochrome, it was a cut by cut. He goes, I had to make adjustments while making full use of various mats as if they were creating a new movie. So again, I know they're actually releasing a special edition through like the Godzilla website, but there are some like Diabolic DVD and Orbit DVD. They both had versions of this available, but man, these special editions, 4K Blu-ray presentations, the special editions include the black and white version on it in addition to the color. I had to grab the special edition because I love this movie so much. I love Godzilla itself so much that I had to get the special edition of this movie. So I highly recommend Godzilla Minus One. Again, my second favorite Godzilla film of all time. And I don't want to reveal the whole plot because we just don't have time to delve into it. I just wanted to give you an idea of my favorite Godzilla movies over the years. What's your favorite Godzilla movie? Did you like the original the best, like me? Did you like Godzilla Minus One more than the original Godzilla? There's a lot of online people that actually think Godzilla Minus One is the greatest Godzilla movie of all time. So what's your pick? Well, comment below. Again, subscribe. We're also on X, Instagram, Facebook. Scared for Reels is our handle. Let's talk about Godzilla. 70 years. It's hard to sum up everything in an hour and 40 minutes, but sure. It's a 70-year legacy. I don't think any film franchise will ever match it. Bond has come close. There's like several movies off.
Right.
Several years, a decade off. And King Kong technically has been around longer, but that franchise took a long 30-some-odd year absence.
Yeah.
Godzilla's the one that's been kind of, there was like 8 or 9 years. 10 years is the longest between movies, but Godzilla is still out there. And again, like that critic noted, as long as there's arrogance, there's always be a Godzilla.
We'll see you next time on Scared for Reals.